There's probably not a more divisive show in the MCU than She-Hulk. When the first trailer dropped, I was really hopeful, to be honest. The show looked fun and explored a character that we hadn't seen before. It had characters that I recognized and really enjoyed, like Wong, Abomination, Hulk, and Daredevil. My only complaint after watching the trailers was that the CGI for She-Hulk looked bad, but I could get past that. However, after watching the show, I have very few good things to say about it. Now, again, I don't like making negative videos like this. It's not what I honestly enjoy doing. I much rather enjoy watching things and talking about things I like with people. Now, I just want to say, if you enjoyed She-Hulk, I am so happy you liked it. This is my personal opinion, so you're free to like the show and you're free to hate the crap out of it. If you haven't watched the show or care about spoilers, go ahead and click away and then come back after you've watched it. Or don't, it's up to you. But now that that's out of the way, let's get into it. I think the majority of the problems this show has are shown best in the first and last episodes. The first problem right off the bat, our introduction to a whole new Avenger. Her introduction is underwhelming. And I don't say it's underwhelming because she doesn't appear in an action sequence or doesn't have some kind of flashy entrance. I don't care about any of that. It's underwhelming rather because we know nothing about her. And you may be thinking, well, obviously, Jackson, you beautiful crud muffin, we just got introduced to her. But as we're being introduced to her, we don't learn really anything about her. We don't learn what her hopes and dreams are, what her ambitions are, nothing. All we know is that she's a lawyer, that Bruce is her cousin. That's it. That's all we know about her. And so when we transition into her and Bruce in the car and they get into the accident, I have no feeling. It just feels like they're hitting plot points at that point. But this feels rushed. This feels like it wasn't done very well, this introduction, and it was truly underwhelming. I also just don't like the origin change we got from the comics. There, in order to save her life, so Jennifer gets into an accident, and in order to save her life, Bruce has to give her an emergency blood transfusion. This, to me, leaves the door wide open for so many different types of stories. We can have Jen being mad at Bruce for giving her powers. But instead what we got is Jen and Bruce get into a car accident and then Jen saving Bruce. And then while she's pulling Bruce out of the car, a couple drops of his blood just so happen to get into her bloodstream. And there you go. That's how you get She-Hulk. It's so... that not only do I not like the change in terms of story potential, but I also just don't like it because it seems underwhelming. Again, it just feels like we're hitting plot points as fast as we can so we can get to what the directors and showrunners actually want to get to. I don't know. It kind of begs the question, what are you trying to do with this TV show? If it's not introducing a new character, if that's not the focus, then what truly is this show? And that's a problem we run into a lot, and I'll get into that later. I think it's real convenient that the one time in the show Bruce isn't Smart Hulk is during this scene. Really? It just seems lazy. Next, then, in the first episode, we transition into a training montage where Bruce tries to train Jen on how to be a Hulk. Now, when the first episode dropped, I saw a lot of people get mad that Jen kind of skipped all the training that Bruce had. And to a certain extent, I agree with them. It seems like they, again, sped run all this character development that Bruce had over the course of 12 years into 20 minutes with She-Hulk. One thing is yes, we don't want to see just Hulk 2.0, but we don't see her go through any type of struggle or growth throughout this episode. She's right this whole time. It's almost like she's correcting Bruce, who's trying to teach her, who's trying to help her. And she's like, nah, I'm good, fam. I got this. Which brings me to my next point, and I've hit this a lot already, but Jen barely struggles, not even in the first episode, but throughout the whole show. She gets life-changing powers where she turns into I forgot what height they said, 7, 8, 9 foot green monster. She gets these life-changing powers, takes it in stride. She loses her job, gets a better one in the exact same episode. And it's not like the whole episode is just leading up to that. She gets it almost instantly after losing it. When she gets thrown in prison, she gets released in 5 minutes, loses her job again, gets it back in the same episode. Her actions have little to no consequences, and she never struggles with anything for more than an episode. It just feels like the writers are trying to get through character development and story as fast as they can so that they can get to the next joke or next cameo. In doing so, it neglects to develop any characters or make any cameos seem natural. It all just seems forced and rushed. She-Hulk makes an effort to tell the audience that this show would not be a weekly cameo thing and that this is She-Hulk's show. However, how the show is written, it leans heavily on its cameos, which I feel is not a good sign of confidence in the show itself. The cameos aren't even done well, in my opinion. I don't even know why they went the route they did with Wong. He's reduced to a dumb sorcerer who doesn't understand the consequences of his own actions and just watches TV in his free time. This is the same guy who lectures Doctor Strange on erasing people's minds in No Way Home and is literally in charge of protecting Earth from mystical threats and running Carmitage. I know I said that wrong. I've tried to pronounce it right and I just can't. Literally the head guy of all magic on Earth. I didn't like what they did with Wong. And then there's Daredevil. I think I made it through watching this show all the way through because I was just waiting for Daredevil. And as much as I love seeing Matt Murdock back, this is not how you do it. His scene in the courtroom was nice, and I'm glad they gave him a hallway scene. And Charlie Cox is just incredible as the character. Other than that, I didn't really enjoy what they did with him. It really seemed like everything they did with Daredevil in episode 8 was to set up the one walk of shame joke at the end, which was all right, but that's not what I want to see from Daredevil. I am absolutely all for Matt making jokes and being lighthearted. In fact, I like to see that from time to time. I don't know. I didn't like what they did with him. I love that he's back in the MCU. I love that Daredevil's in the MCU. This is just not what I wanted to see. And then there's Abomination, which I thought was a huge letdown. And I know this technically isn't a cameo, but I thought he was going to be way more involved in the story. In fact, I thought the show was going to be about releasing him from prison. And I was really excited to see him again after Shang-Chi. But we barely get any of him here. We mostly get Emil, who is a completely different character from when he was in The Incredible Hulk. I honestly don't know how I feel about that. It just feels like another disappointing comeback. And then there was the finale, and it was definitely something. I liked how they started it out. She-Hulk is in prison. Everyone thinks she's a monster. They gotta find some way to get her out of prison. They should have stuck with that, with a lawyer-heavy episode, which is something they haven't done this whole series, it feels. Then they almost just redo everything in episode 2 with her losing her job. And then she has the idea to go to Emil's ranch and discovers that Intelligentsia was meeting there and that Todd, yes, Todd is the big bad that the series was pointing to. Todd was the guy who hired the thugs to get She-Hulk's blood. That's where this show was leading. Then he uses She-Hulk's blood to make himself a Hulk, which, whatever. And then Bruce and Titania show up, and Abomination's there, and it's like, ugh, another one of these things. But then something happens that I thought was decent at first, and then, I'm just going to tell you, then She-Hulk breaks the fourth wall, goes to a Disney Plus menu, breaks into Marvel Studios, goes all the way up to the top as Kevin, who turns out to be a robot, to change the ending of the show. And they make a ton of jokes, and I like the dialogue between them. Like, I love the Black Panther Wakanda Forever reference. I love the joke that she made, like, when are the X-Men coming? And then the fourth wall break of her looking at the camera. Like, I actually really like that. What I don't like is that Kevin changes everything. And then when we jump back into the show, everything's just solved. Like, there's no conflict. It's like there's no room for character growth. It just seems so underwhelming. And then there's the implication of the MCU that this is all just run by a robot. That all this that we're watching, the world that I've grown to love and cherish, the characters that I've grown up in, and I realize this is fake, but I've grown to love this franchise, love this universe, and to learn that it's just the making of a robot for some meta fourth wall joke is so disappointing. I like the idea, and I like that they tried to do something different from the finale, but this is not how you do it. I thought this was a lawyer show. None of the finale had to do with law. Anyway, before I start ranting anymore about the finale, when she gets back, Todd's arrested, Abomination goes back to prison, and then Daredevil shows up to go to dinner with Jen and her family. We just go back to where we started with Abomination. He's back in prison. So what was the point of that whole storyline? At that dinner, Bruce shows up and introduces Scar, who has the worst hairline in the MCU. Sorry. He introduces Scar in the most underwhelming way possible. It's like, oh, yeah, that's Scar. Which I get what they were going for, but the fact that what Bruce was doing was more interesting to me than anything else in the show made this super disappointing for me. And then that's about it. I'm not making this stuff up. That's how the series ends. She-Hulk is a mess. It doesn't know what it wants to be. It underdevelops its characters and relies on cameos to keep the audience invested and coming back week after week. The writing feels lazy and the whole show just seems rushed. And that's even true of the CGI. It just seems really bad. I could forgive all of this if there was some substance to the show, but it's really boring and nothing really seems to happen. Which is a shame because I believe that Tatiana Maslany, which I believe is how you say her name, is an amazing choice to play She-Hulk. And it's a shame because I was excited to see Daredevil come back. I was excited to see a lawyer show in the MCU. I was excited to see how law influenced the actions of superheroes and what kind of weight the legal system held against superheroes. But we didn't really see any of that. It's sad, and I know we're probably going to get a season 2, and I hope that the writers understand what worked and what didn't and makes the changes that it needs to. I really hope She-Hulk is redeemed in future Marvel projects. I really enjoyed the character. I really love the actor. But right now, the first impression we got of her in the MCU just wasn't that great. But that's it for me. Let me know what y'all thought about She-Hulk down in the comment section below. Did you like it? Did you not? Let me know. Love you guys. Thanks for watching. Hope you all have a tremendous day. And until next time, peace out, bro skillets.